The point we are talking here about is central in terms of, I mentioned it at some earlier stage, we are talking about a specific economic system, historically specific. It's not what you always have, and this is not what you always have had, and this is most likely or hopefully not what we always will have. Its wealth of those societies, these societies, presents itself as an immense accumulation of commodities, its unit being the single commodity. Meaning it's about buying, it's about accumulating, not something in terms of real life, not in terms of use value, but in terms of products or commodities. Now there is this one dimension to it which kind of is immediately economic in terms of you see it or you say that's about economics. And this is the famous formula that we produce something means for life. We sell it on the market and we get money for it. But we use the money and we want the money to buy more commodities. This is one of the circles of economic activities. We don't produce something to use it ourselves. We want to sell it in order, again, to get more products back. If I have this thing and sell it and get the same thing back, I won't do it. If I get two things back, that's a different story. If I don't get two of these back, but something that is more valuable than this, I will do it. I'm not looking, important, I'm not looking at the use value. I'm looking at getting back more than I'm invested. Now we have historically the turn that I'm actually not producing something to get more back, but I have money. I invest the money into commodities. Later we come back what kind of commodities, in order not to produce something, not to produce your bread, but in order to get more money back. This is the rationale behind it. And this is, at the end of the day, the only rationale behind it. There you have it. And what is behind it is, the crucial point is this. And mind, this is really a very crucial one. Labor, land, and money are essential elements of industry, of this system, of this economic system. They also must be organized in markets. In fact, these markets form an absolutely vital part of the economic system. Now comes the important and decisive point. But labor, land, and money are obviously not commodities as such. I produce a phone, I produce certain things as commodities, but labor, land, and money are obviously not commodities. The postulate that anything that is bought and sold must have been produced for sale, and this is not the case with labor and land and money. Actually, I cannot really produce land. I can gain a little land from a desert, This is actually there, and I can make it futile ground. Of course, I produce labor in terms of I produce my little offspring, but I do not produce my children in order as a commodity to sell them on the market. The idea is to have children, to have family, to produce life, but not to produce workforce. I think it's obvious that this is a little bit, that it is obviously something different. Now, in economics, we talk about factors of production, and any standard textbook will tell you it is land, labor, and capital. Then you have, in addition, intellectual capital, expertise, social capital, order, law, conduct, social behavior. Come at 9 o'clock if you have to start at 9 o'clock and not at 10 past 9 and not at 10 minutes early. Things like this. Land is defined as land, literally as soil, but it is as well the raw material you gain out of it. Meaning it is, if there is oil on your ground, on your land, this is part of the land, even if it's a separate thing. Futile ground. Try to plant a tree in the desert, you have huge difficulties. Try to plant it on a futile ground, it will grow without that you do anything to it. Labor, including intellectual work, so it's not just the physical labor, but it is as well intellectual work, it is organizing things, administration, and capital, machines, tools, building. Mind, it's not money. Capital is not money. If you have a huge amount of money, this is not capital. If you invest it into machines, tools, buildings, as well if you buy land or labor, this is capital. But first and foremost, capital here as factor of production is machines, tools, and buildings. And then every textbook will tell you there is this entrepreneurship. The entrepreneur, this person who has the capital, who brings the three factors of production together. The laborer cannot do it. The laborer does not have the capital that is needed to buy machines and tools. This is what actually the entrepreneur has. He can buy machines, invest into it. He can buy the labor force, labor power, and he has or he can buy the land. Bringing them together, bringing them in an intelligible way together, that it is possible to arrive here at a little bit more. In which way ever, innovation, finding a niche on the market where you can sell products which are new, this is something decisive for the entire process of production, for the entire economic process. Now the problem is, and we talked about it, and this is the core of it, it's the core of the entire economic process. Land is not produced, land is not a commodity in the strict sense, but land is the place where we live, the space where we live. It's a habitat, is the term. It's not a commodity that can be simply produced and reproduced as much as we need it. This is limited, but it's not only the limitation, but it is as well of a different kind. Labor as well. It's about human beings, human life, which is more than a factor of production. Keep the others, keep the capital, keep the entrepreneurship. One of the important decisive things in this context is the entire orientation. This is what I said before. Now land is redefined as commodity. It's not a matter of living there. Labor, human beings, it's not about human life, but it is redefining them as matter of commodities, as matter of marketable goods. And the idea behind it is utilities. You know this term, I mentioned it before, in another quote it came up. Utilitarianism, two names, John Stuart Mill and John Bentham. They came up with this idea, with this concept. What we do is different to Engels, we are not producing what we need for life. This definition we have had before. We are not, in the second step, looking for the exchange, but we are producing, or behind this idea of production is the greatest happiness for all. Be happy, smile, but stay here and don't say, happy, here in the lecture, no, somewhere else. So the idea is greatest amount of pleasure and minimum of pain behind it. That's already very much an issue of economic exchange. Pay as little as possible and get as much as possible. Kind of translation. It depends, of course, on the valuation of your pleasure. You can say my pleasure is actually going out and enjoying the rain, or you can say the pleasure is to go out into the rain, but later, because I first want to study, I want to get a good job, and then I want to have my holidays, and then I can go into the rain, being qualified. And you can say the pain I suffer here going to university for 4 years, it's reasonable. It's not really torture, it's not suffering all the time. I have my pleasures, I sometimes enjoy lectures, I enjoy learning. I get as well this kind of something out of it in terms of knowledge. I like to know something. And then we go back to the idea of the contract. You remember, agreement, free will, two parties, mutual obligations and mutual benefit, and limited to what we decide upon. And translated into terms of commodification, we have maximization of individual utilities, meaning I want to get as much as possible, and utility means that is something that makes me happy. And usually, coming back to this one quote by Marx, it is measured in terms of commodities. What do I have? How many products do I have? What kind of products do I have? Now, there is a huge discussion about it, what they really meant. We can leave it out. At least I want to briefly mention it. Is it a utility that makes me happy if I see you happy? So, if I invite you for a drink, it's not maximization of individual utilities, because then I would drink two. But I can say, actually, I like to be together with you. I like to see you happy, enjoying the drink. So I have one drink, you have one drink, and that's part of my utility, your drink. The core idea is accumulation of commodities. that I think are good, referring to maximizing opportunities, trying, as I said, trying to get as much out of it as possible. A rational decision and complete information. Most tricky things, I decide today what I do, what I buy, being informed about the price of this everywhere and anywhere. And in the future. I know I don't need this now, meaning it's not essential, existential. So I can postpone the purchase and buy it tomorrow or in a year's time. And I have the information about the price, what it costs tomorrow or in a year's time. This is the assumption. I know everything, and it's a rational decision. I don't waste utilities, meaning I go to the nearest shop and to the cheapest shop, and then I have to try to balance this conflict. Is it worthwhile to go to saving 100 yuan to the shop that is half an hour out of the way, where I pay possibly 5 yuan for the bus, going there and coming back, 4. But this is all the calculation I do immediately when I decide. And I know, standing in the shop, this is the price. I know the price in the shop, in the other shop, and I calculate, rational decision, this kind of rationality, I calculate immediately, yes, it's worthwhile to go there. Or I say it's not. And this utility concept is very much linked to what we have been already talking about, the distinction between use value and exchange value. Because utilities, at the end of the day, I can only assess them, I can only value them if I look at the exchange value. I cannot put a figure on my happiness, on my feeling well in economics. You can do this in psychology, possibly. And this is a psychologist then saying, yeah, today you are looking much better, you are more relaxed, and I think you are more happy. And I think it's about 5 compared with 2 yesterday. And if it goes on, tomorrow you will be by 7, and the day after you will be by 10, maximum of happiness. So even psychologists would have difficulties to do this, but we cannot, in economics, we are not dealing with this. We are dealing with the figures we put on the exchange value. Do you make a good bargain? In a way, that's the question. Which means we have to go back to the central issue of commodities, defining them. Those who read Polanyi and not on the phone may know this, remember it. It is with the help of the commodity concept that the mechanism of the market is geared to the various elements of industrial life, again. This is the core concept of the entire process of what we are talking about. The entire core process of producing for the market, exchanging on the market, and looking at everything we do in these terms of utility exchange and utility maximization. If we are not economists, we can think, or we do think, in another way. But as economists, we only focus on this one point. And because we do so, because we focus in this way, we have our little function, utility function. And this is the easiest way of getting rid of all these complicated things in the background, we say it's the individual's preference. We put a number on it, from 1 to 10. That's the U1. And it is a function of the combination of different goods. And these goods I can only measure them in terms of commodities. That's the core of it. I go back to this and say each individual with his personal preferences looks at this function of my utility, my individual utility, is a combination of these different goods, of this bundle of goods. X can go from A to Z. You have this basket, and we will come back to the basket. Actually, it's a used concept, having a physical basket to imagine what the GDP is, what inflation is. There we are dealing with basket, literally, with bundles. We put something into the basket and say, this is how we calculate this number. This is what we do here with the individual. Now we have a kind of problem that you like fancy clothes, you like many books and telephones, and you like fancy cars, and you like to go for holidays, and everybody has a different individual preference, a different utility function. And this is something we cannot deal with because we are economists. We are not dealing with individuals. Even if we are dealing with individuals, because this is the point of departure. We are always looking at the behavior of individuals. What do they buy? Why do they buy it? And how can we steer this process? What effect has this on the wider economy? And this is how we do it. Aggregation. We say, okay, you do this, you do something completely different. And at the end of the day, if we put all these functions together, then we arrive actually at the utility function of the society. It's a simple thing. If you like your clothes, you like your books, and you like your fancy car, and you go like holidays, our society of 4 people likes clothes, fancy cars, holidays, and books. And because you don't like any book, but she likes 100 books, our society, your society, likes 100 books. Because it's the two of you are building this society. And one likes 100 books, the other doesn't like any book. It's still, for the two of you, 100 books. It doesn't matter. In this way, we are not interested in individuals. At the same time, we take the individual as point of departure. We say, I cannot see what society wants. I can only say and see what the aggregation of individuals is, what is happening there. So you have this function, and you can put, of course, no figure on your individual preference. I cannot say, reader. This person is a reader, likes to read, and this liking of reading is 100. But I can say, you like 100 books, and you can buy 100 books. You spend, out of the entire money you have, a certain amount to buy 100 books. So I actually put indirectly a number on your individual preference by looking at the commodities you buy. 100 books. And you bought the fancy car, right? So you spend much more than she does for the books, because a fancy car is very expensive. So your preference is actually not 100, this is a money unit, but your preference is, I don't know, a couple of thousands and even more for this fancy car. Let's say 1,000, make things easy. So, and at the end of the day, we arrive, if we go through society, there's somebody spending 500, there's somebody spending 50, there's somebody spending 20, a little bit of reader, there's somebody 0. At the end of the day, we say this society, and we do the overall calculation, 100 plus 50 plus 20, and then we have the overall number. Here we have the other goods. This society has this wealth of whatever the amount will be, of being reader, being fancy car drivers, or whatsoever. So we come back to this statement of the wealth of those societies presents itself as an immense accumulation of commodities, its unit being single commodity. You have your books, you have your car, our society has a car and books. Our society has many cars and many books. Different things, different combinations. But this is the way how we actually work. The commodity is the central orientation. It is not the shadow you get out of this hut, but it is the shadow you get out of this hut, meaning you are pushed towards this hut. And this is what happened in Mexico. An American tourist complimented the Mexican fisherman on the quality of his fish and asked how long it took him to catch them. Not very long, answered the Mexican. But then, why didn't you stay out longer and catch more, asked the American. The American explained that this small catch was sufficient to meet his needs and the needs of his family. The American asked, but what do you do with all your time? Well, I sleep late, I fish a little, play with my children, and take a siesta with my wife. In the evenings, I go to the village to see my friends, have a few drinks, and play the guitar and sing a few songs. I have a full life. Hang on, the American interrupted. I have an MBA from Harvard, and I can help you. You should start by fishing longer every day. You can then sell the extra fish you catch. With the extra revenue, you can buy a bigger boat. With the extra money, the larger boat will bring, you can buy a second one and a third one, and so on, until you have an entire fleet of trawls. Instead of selling your fish to a middleman, to the trader, you can negotiate directly with a processing plant and maybe even open your own plant. You can then leave this little village and move to Mexico City, to Los Angeles, or even to New York City. From there, you can direct your huge enterprise. How long would that take? Well, 20, perhaps 25 years, replied the American. And after that? Afterwards. That's when it gets really exciting, answered the American, laughing. When your business gets really big, you can start selling stock and make millions on the stock market. Millions, really. Yeah. And after that, that is the best part. You'll be able to retire, live in a tiny village, near the coast, sleep late, catch a few fish, take a siesta, and spend your evenings drinking and enjoying your friends. So this is the orientation, the reorientation of the entire process of production. In this understanding of you are not looking for the use value, you are not looking of something that is sustainable for yourself or for your tribe, if you go back there, but you are now on the one hand free, and you are kind of pushed towards producing more than you need to be able to sell it. Don't stay in your village, but move out. Now, in this way, you can say there is this choice of staying in the village. But in the other case, you have to say there is more to it, because now we have to move on and say, if I am on the market already, I have to produce as much as possible, because if I don't do it, I will be pushed out and there is somebody competing. So this is the decision of all or nothing, and this is the decision of something that I can actually not decide. Because there is only this one option, in or out. It's the structural mechanism of being forced to produce along this rationale. It's a kind of self-referential, what we call a self-referential process. If you once start this, you have to move on. You cannot stop, or it's at least difficult to stop. If you look at your individual employment situation, you cannot stop, okay, but I only want to work part-time. It may be possible, but usually it's not. You have to work a certain amount of hours. And then you have the other dimension to it, that you need to produce, to be productive. You need those instruments that are used by your competitors. Look at division of labor. You cannot simply say, yeah, I produce the old style. Because at least you won't be able to produce for the market anymore. You won't be able to produce commodities. If you still produce your 1 pin or your 500 with a little bit of division of labor, the others will be out-competing you, and you will be lost. You will be pushed out of the market.